No, we were better this year.
But
Ferrari was definitely better this year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think the thing that sort of tarnishes the season is the last race and not clinching second in the constructors. Daniel Ricciardo, I'm putting it out there. Danny Rick,
I knew
Yuki.
you'd go with it.
Ricciardo's the fan favourite, but I'm going to bank on Yuki.
I think I also back Yuki.
Hello and welcome back to the On Track GP podcast, where it is 2024. Happy New Year! We made it. We made it. We're officially into our second season now.
Nice.
It's the 1st of January. And the most important thing that I have to say, have you heard the big, amazing, wonderful On Track GP news?
I haven't.
We have been nominated in the Best Motorsports Podcast category in the Sports Podcast Awards. In our first season, we got that.
Light work.
So if you have been watching, please do go and give us a vote if you would like to. You can follow the link in the description to get your vote in. Have you voted yet, Abby?
I voted.
Voted
Nice.
indeed. Voted and shared.
Yeah, voted and shared.
Liked, shared.
Subscribed.
All of it. Well, at least we're doing at least
Followed.
one thing right. So that's really good. Look, it's the brand new season. Last season we saw crazy Red Bull domination. My first question is that going to change, do you think? Abby, go on, you go. Abby.
You're wearing the Red Bull top, it better change.
No, I can't foresee it. I can't foresee it. I can't foresee Red Bull not being so dominant. I feel like the rest of the pack have to catch up a little bit at some point. So I still think that we're going to look at this season and come the end of it, we're still going to be sitting here saying that Red Bull have again won it and won it by quite a margin. But I don't think it will be the same that, you know, Max basically wins every single race. I do think that we'll see, I guess, you know, other teams on the podium. I'm thinking that McLaren will probably, and hopefully for them, build on kind of the progress that they've definitely made this year.
Yeah.
Ferrari, again, for what it's worth, I mean, didn't end up having the actual, like the worst season.
Got a win.
Yeah, they've got a win, but
That basically means we're the second best team in the world.
basically.
I mean, if that's how you feel at the end of the season, then yeah.
I kind of feel that it's so difficult to like compare because everyone obviously looks at Red Bull and sees like how dominant they are, but you can't compare Ferrari to Red Bull at the minute. You can't compare Mercedes to Red Bull at the minute. You can't compare McLaren to Red Bull. I think that those kind of three cars are in a little league of their own, and I think for 2024 for this new season, it's about closing the gap in terms of them three, and then trying to see how far the gap is between the top of that to the Red Bulls. But I still think it's going to be a very dominant season. I can't foresee that Max is not going to win another title. But I think this season was so ridiculous, seeing him win all those consecutive races in a row, bar, I guess, one.
Yeah.
And also having Red Bulls on the podium for everything. So I still think it's going to be like that. But I'm really intrigued to see, out of those three teams, who is actually able to challenge, because there's been no challenge from Red Bull whatsoever.
Well, Checo has come out, Matisse, and said that he wants to go one better, and he finished second. He wants to now go and win.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say he wants to go one better. Can he just get to Q3?
Yeah. Clearly, keeping Checo in check is not working because he's now getting a bit far. He's reaching for the stars. It's just a bit too much for me. I think the big debate on Red Bull is whether Checo is actually going to perform this year. I don't think Red Bull will be as dominant, because I think it's impossible to be as dominant as they was. I think there'll be a lot more race wins for, say, McLaren, and hopefully Lando will pick up one as well. But I think it's all dependent on Checo, because I think it will be closer. I think McLaren, for me, are the team that I look at the most that will bridge the gap. I can't trust Mercedes right now because they keep messing up every single W they bring out. It's not W, it's just L's. And then Ferrari, I don't need to speak. If I speak, I'm in big trouble. So
I don't think Ferrari were actually as bad as we thought they were.
They underperform a lot.
But they underperform every year anyway.
In terms of their decision making, when drivers are having to take the reins in terms of decision making on track and try to find the race wins for themselves and try to make the decisions themselves as to what they should do, and their pit wall's not helping them out. I just don't see. I can't keep every single season saying, "Oh, Ferrari." Like they need to show it.
Do you think their strategy was better this season or the season before?
It couldn't have got worse than the season before.
No, we were better this year.
But
Ferrari was definitely better this year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think the thing that sort of tarnishes the season is the last race and not clinching second in the constructors. So we look, because if we get second, we go, we're the only team that won a race that wasn't Red Bull, and we finish second. We are actually the second best team, but coming third and dropping behind Mercedes, which, as you say, it was like a pretty terrible car, but they finished second with it.
I think the problem with Ferrari is that they was on pole enough times to get maybe a few more race wins, and I think you just always knew they were going to drop off, whereas McLaren was always on the upward trajectory. So I don't know. For me, I'm banking on McLaren to take a few more wins off Red Bull.
And does Lando Norris win a race next season?
Yeah, he does.
100%.
100%.
Look, we both love Lando. Let's be real. We love Lando. I also really like Oscar as well. I feel that it's so difficult in a season like we just had for anybody to win a race. That's why we have to give credit to Ferrari, who actually did manage to do it.
Yeah.
Obviously, Red Bull had a seriously off day that day, though. We did have an off day. But I think if I look at any of the teams who've been the most competitive towards actually Red Bull, I'd say it's McLaren. And sometimes you say, well, the table doesn't lie. Well, I think the table does lie a little bit, because obviously they had a poor start, McLaren. But if you look at them throughout the whole season, I'd say they were the most consistent team outside of a Red Bull.
I think absolutely after whenever, I forget exactly what number, but let's say after like maybe the 10th race or whatever, and they just suddenly picked it up, they were the second best team after that.
Max has shown that he's too consistent to drop off and not win that title again. He's got something.
You think the title's his next year as well? Yeah,
100%.
no question. I think
There's no complacency there.
It's difficult to play devil's advocate to that and even say, oh, but what happens if this, and this happens? Because even in the moments where he was under pressure this season, he didn't panic. He just kept such a cool head and drove beautifully. And
the only race where Red Bull struggled was Singapore. That was the only track they struggled on. The car didn't like it. That's the only thing. So, look, I'm sure they'll be working on that to rectify, the things that went wrong on certain tracks and where maybe the Red Bulls just didn't perform as highly or to the best. But I think, as we spoke about Checo, I do think for Max to make sure that he does get that other title, I do think Checo is going to have to perform. He's going to have to make sure he is there as finishing second or third in all the races to make sure, because that gap I do feel will close. So he's kind of been let off this season where Max has been so dominant that it hasn't been such an issue. But I think with everyone probably going to improve at some point, especially the McLarens over this kind of break, that Checo is going to have to make sure he goes back to being that second driver and being close or close enough to Max.
Interesting. Let's have a little talk about Ferrari, just because I love them. Do you think it makes a difference with Fred Vasseur being the team principal? He obviously came in at the start of the season, but hadn't had the time to develop the car and kind of be... So this is really his first full season of leadership. Yeah. Do we think that could make a little bit of a difference for Ferrari at all?
You have to hope so. You have to hope so. I am intrigued to see if that helps. I think the qualifying pace is there. We know that in terms of Leclerc, fantastically, quick across one lap. They've got the talent. I don't have any question that the talent's there for the driver's side of things. I've questioned science, but he's actually shown, over the last season that he can also perform as well.
He's been quick.
He was quick. So I don't think now the question is on the talent of the drivers at all. I think they've ironed out mistakes. They've matured. I think it's all down to the car. If they can get the car to a level where it's matching or close to Red Bull
and not giving up in a formation lap,
then that would help a bit. That would be great.
Something tells me that will mean we have a better season if our car doesn't give up.
And then it will all be down to the pit wall again, and all down to strategy, and not forgetting that you've got to put 2 different compound tyres on, and things like that.
Yeah, that tends to help as well. The W15, brand new for this year. What are they going to do? Like, no side pods last year. What do you think? No spoiler this year or something?
I think that this year the car's going to float in the air. I think that's what's going to... Last time it was porpoising. This time I think it's just going to float above the ground,
Fail or flop? W15, fail or flop? Sorry, flop or...
No, fail.
Success.
Yeah.
Flop or flop. Fail or flop. I don't think that works.
That's the same thing. Is it going to be good or is it going to be bad?
I have no confidence in Mercedes.
I don't think it can be as worse as the 14.
You don't think it can get worse?
I don't think that the issues that they have had with the 14, I can't foresee that they would make a car remotely the same. I think with the 15, surely they've gone down a Red Bull route.
Everybody has to.
I know they didn't want to, but sometimes you have to admit defeat, and I feel like they kind of did that this season. So I still don't know how they actually ended up finished second in the constructors.
To be honest.
Lewis Hamilton.
I think that's a credit completely to Lewis and his just insane driving ability, because the car was absolutely no help at all. And we've seen this for however many years they've had the W14. It's flogging a dead horse. So for the 15, in my opinion, they had to go with something completely different, and in terms of what they had, but also go with a model that isn't trusted and well known, which is like all the other cars on the grid, which is trying to be a copy of the Red Bull. So I think it might still have a few teething issues, but I definitely don't think we're going to see the same issues that we've seen over the last couple of years.
I think one of the biggest stories at the beginning of last season, which then kind of tailed away, was the Aston Martin.
Yeah.
It just out of nowhere, suddenly they had the second quickest car. Do we think that their development is going to be better throughout the season, or do we think they're going to start slowly and do a McLaren and come back? What do we sort of think could be potentially on the horizon for Aston Martin?
Aston Martin are a difficult one because they did take me by shock. I know they invested a lot of money in, but they did take me by shock last year to just go and propel themselves onto the podium.
Came from nowhere.
It was outrageous.
Those first three races were mad.
Yeah, and Alonso obviously knows exactly what he's doing. You know, so once you do give him a car like that, you're destined to be on the podium. But I think for Aston, it's about managing expectations, because the rest of the teams they did fall off dramatically towards the end of the season.
Yeah,
and it wasn't just like a slight decline, it was a sharp decline where they were nowhere near podiums, they were nowhere near challenging, and they were kind of just floating around in the middle of the grid. So I think for them it's about probably managing expectations and trying to not go to that kind of, you know, ups and downs. Try and have a bit of stability throughout the season, and be alongside all those cars we've mentioned, but throughout the whole year. And I think that might take a different approach this time.
I think you're right. It is a managing expectations thing. I think realistically, I can kind of see them definitely not as good a start, but just kind of basically being back in the midfield. What do you think, Abbi?
Yeah, I kind of think the same. I think credit again to what they kind of, I guess, achieved in the season that's just gone past, because none of us expected that at all. I think their real battle at the minute, when you look at how far McLaren has kind of come on as well, and we're hoping that they're going to kind of do the same. So you've got the top of Red Bull, then you've got the Mercedes, the Ferrari, and I'm now kind of grouping McLaren into that as like the next who can kind of finish in that top three. I can't see Aston finishing above those midfield kind of places. I think it's about right where they actually ended up finishing in the constructors, and I think they'll probably level off at about there. I think it probably needs even more investment. It's not to say that maybe Alonso still won't grab a few podiums here and there, but I just don't think the car is. I don't think it's built for all tracks, and I don't think that's going to change much in a couple of months, if that makes sense. So I do think it's one of those things where we might see like peaks and troughs with it next season. But I couldn't foresee them finishing higher than maybe fifth in the constructors again.
It seems to be the way, doesn't it? It would have to be something pretty special.
It will be Alonso that bags like maybe like a P3 or something like that. But which is again, it's a great achievement, for Aston, achievement. And where you actually think that they were as well. So
yeah, he's the magic dust in that team,
without a doubt. Really. If they haven't got Alonso, they haven't got anything.
No.
Alpine, we're going to see the new investors start to come in now. In Ryan Reynolds, what do you think about that?
I don't know. Ryan Reynolds has invested into a lot, so
there's a lot.
There's a hell of a lot
Travis
of them.
Kelce.
Yes.
There's so many different NFL, NBA.
Who's been going round dishing out Alpine contracts to get all these unbelievably sort of famous sports stars, mostly, to come and sign? It's crazy.
I think Alpine's still an exciting team because I think their driver lineup is interesting because they've obviously gone all French. There's obviously going to be a bit of rivalry there.
They've gone all French.
They've gone all
French on us.
Yeah, there is talent there. There's inconsistency, but there's definitely talent there between the pairing of them. And I just want Alpine to become that exciting team that they were a couple of years ago again. I want them to try and break into this group that we've mentioned, which is definitely the group. And I don't want them to get lost in another midfield battle. I think they will finish in midfield at the end of it all, but I want them to have more races where they do shock people and find themselves near the podium and in fourth or, jousting with the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari, because I think they're capable of doing that from what they did a couple of years ago. But it's going to be difficult because there's only so many positions and there's a lot of teams already ahead of them. But
Yeah,
I do have faith in Alpine.
They had glimpses this season. I think both drivers finished on the podium individually in races, which is a pretty big achievement when you consider that almost always the first spot is taken. There's only one
two
person
spots.
is always going to finish first, or one car is always going to finish first. That's pretty impressive. Do you have any hope for Alpine?
Yeah, I think they're a really interesting team, and I am excited to kind of see the investment and what that does and how it elevates the car. I feel like we're definitely going to get a documentary out of it.
Really hope so.
We're all aware that that's probably going to get
Netflix,
snapped up or like a Discovery Plus Disney Channel type thing. So I'm excited for that and to see what it does. I agree with you on the driver partnership. I think there is enough talent in there. I think the only problem again is maybe the infighting, which we saw a couple times this season. Also, they've crashed into each other, I think, more times
That was
than
bad.
anyone else this season. So I don't know. I feel like, again, it's probably too soon to say they're going to be really challenging with the rest of the pack in terms of at the top. I think that they're probably their biggest competitor is going to be
Themselves.
Themselves, but also Aston. I think that it's going to be between them two to see who finishes kind of best of that midfield. I don't know how much they will be able to improve the car.
Could they do an Aston Martin at the beginning of the season?
They could.
Could they just appear
come
and
out
bang?
the blocks flying? Like they could, but I feel like when I think about what's going to happen with the rest of the group, like I do feel like Ferrari will improve. I do feel like Mercedes will improve, and I do feel like McLaren will improve. I don't necessarily think Aston and Alpine will have improved that much to kind of burst their way into like that mini group at this stage. I think that with this investment coming in, this is something that will happen over time, maybe. But I don't know. There's something not quite right for me with Alpine at the moment. I don't know if it is the driver partnership as well.
It was those 3 consecutive races of no points, was it?
Yeah, I feel
that
like
was
it's
ugly.
maybe like a killer edge, if that makes sense. Like I rate both drivers.
Nice drivers.
Yeah, nice drivers, like comfortable. But I feel like, let's say it was a driver partnership of Gasly and Alonso, I'd feel much more confident. Or even if it was Ocon and Alonso,
Yeah.
I
It
feel
used
there
to be,
has to
yeah.
be. Yeah, I feel like there needs to be one driver who is a shark, if that makes sense. And I don't see either of them as a shark at this point.
Interesting. Well, we'll see. I mean, I quite like the idea that we have another, because that was really exciting at the beginning of last year, where we were like, what is going on? Why are Aston Martin so quick? It's nice when there's an unknown element in
Yeah.
Formula One, because it's so data driven that when we do get those little things that surprise us as fans, we love that. So maybe Alpine could be the team to do that, but maybe it is the driver pairing that's not going to be able to work out for them. AlphaTauri, we've got Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda.
Vibes.
They're changing the name. They haven't actually officially released what the name is going to be. I heard
I feel
could
like-
be Racing Bulls.
Oh yeah, I've heard. Yeah.
Racing Bulls.
Racing
Not a fan of
Bulls.
that at all.
That's so American.
It's so,
Not a fan of
silly.
that at all.
But what do we think about that pairing, Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda? Who scores more points next season,
Ooh.
Daniel Ricciardo or Yuki Tsunoda?
That's a really good question.
Thanks,
That's tough. I'm gonna bank on Yuki.
Daniel Ricciardo. I'm putting it out there.
gonna bank.
Danny Rick.
I knew you
I
Yuki.
would.
knew you'd go with it.
Ricardo's the fan
I love him.
favorite, but I'm gonna bank on Yuki.
I think I also back Yuki.
Really?
I love Danny Rick, really do, but I don't know. I feel like
Yuki's growing every season.
yeah,
in
he's
that
a
car.
decent little driver, Yuki.
Yeah.
I feel, and that's not to say that Danny Rick isn't. I feel like he has probably got quite lucky getting the seat.
Ooh, that's a controversial one.
It is, and I like him as a driver, but I feel like he got the seat, obviously after Nick de Vries, after he left, and again, obviously he missed all that period of time out with the injury, and if anything, Liam Lawson probably should have got the seat.
I would have liked to see Liam Lawson finish the season off. I know that was
didn't
never
see,
going to happen.
I didn't see enough of Danny Rick to
never gonna
justify
happen,
him
but-
getting the seat.
Yeah.
He's got it on default because he's also
Big name.
He's a big name. He's
Marketing.
also the third driver at Red Bull, and everyone likes to see him, and it's great for commercial value
Yeah.
of having him. And I rate him as a driver, but I just think that probably Liam Lawson deserved it more on races.
I think out of everybody on the grid, the biggest season for an individual is Ricciardo.
Interesting.
Because I think he has to leapfrog Yuki and become that number one driver. Because if he doesn't do that, I don't think he's worth the seat. And I think he's got to show that he has kind of he's rejuvenated again, and he is remotivated, and he does want to be in the sport, and he is.
And the
capable,
McLaren was just a period in his career.
And he is capable of showing some sort of consistency at one team, because he has hopped around quite a bit and maybe made a few wrong decisions along the way, and things haven't quite aligned for him. But I think this season it has to, because if it doesn't, I do think he'll be out for Formula One for good this time. Let's
have a little chat about Williams, Haas, and not Alfa Romeo anymore. They're now Sauber. Well, Sauber never really left, did they? But they're renamed as Sauber. They have obviously extra time in the wind tunnel, which is very, very beneficial. And Red Bull obviously get the least amount of time. Yes. Out of those three, Williams, Haas, and Sauber, who finishes the highest at the end of the season?
I'm rooting for Williams, because I want Williams to do so well. I want Williams as one of the historic teams to be right back up there again. Even I'd have them above Alpine and everyone.
Yeah.
I want Williams back where they belong. That's what I want for Williams. So out of those three, easy Williams.
I mean, Albon's been special.
Yeah.
Last year he was great.
Yeah. Albon's been really, really good. He's been getting the most, I think, out of that car. You know, for years they barely even scored a point, and I think that they obviously have, since it's James Vowles that obviously came in, and I think that you can see the difference that he's made by coming in anyway. And I think Alex Albon is definitely over the days of Red Bull. I think he's grown up a lot. I think driving and, you know, his ability, we can see what he's got and what he can kind of extract out the car. It just, the car needs to be better. I agree with you. I think they'll finish best of the rest. And I would love to see them have a resurgent season. I really would. I'd love to be like they are, finishing firmly mid-table, you know, growing each year. It's not something we're going to see overnight, them go from being, you know, bottom of the pack kind of thing to being near the top again. But as long I can see the trajectory that they
seems like there's a plan now.
There seems like there's a plan. It's not just like, oh my God, we can't do anything. We've got no money. We've got nothing to invest or grow with. They've got a great driver. Again, Logan Sargent, I feel like
re-signed.
Did re-sign. I think it suits them. I think it suits them to do that. Again, it's also the Americanization of it as well. You have to think about how much branding and stuff that helps in terms of funds,
money,
which is what they need. So I think Williams, I think they could have a nice season, and I think a nice season for them. Maybe they even squeeze into the lower end of the mid-table.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Last question for you today. What race this year are you most looking forward to? Today, New Year's Day, what are you most looking forward to out of the 24 races that we're going to have this season?
I'll go.
You go.
Mexico.
Really?
Yeah. Redeem team.
Perez.
Perez
Doesn't do it for me, that one.
I know, but because of what happened in Mexico, for me, the pressure, I can't tell you the amount of pressure Perez is on, because I will put him under that pressure.
He feels it from here.
He's under the microscope like never before.
For that reason, you're interested to see how he copes with it. Interesting. Abby?
As like a personal favourite, I always love Australia. But I'm actually excited to see Singapore, because I want to see what they learned.
A Red Bull resurgence.
1-2 dominant. That was just a one-off what happened in Singapore.
Danny Rick back in Australia is a shout, to be fair, as well.
Yeah, that's very good, because he wasn't in the seat at that point. That's a very good shout. He'll be the poster boy. I am most excited for Vegas again.
You love Vegas.
I just really thought I was going to hate everything about it, because it was just a stupid show race. And then the actual race was one of the best we had all season. It was fantastic, and I hope it delivers again. Well, there we go. Thanks, guys, for giving up your New Year's Day.
Pleasure.
That was
for you, Joe. Anything.
So kind, the two of you.
I appreciate you not being plastered.
Yeah, exactly. No comment. Hopefully you're not feeling too rough as well. Thank you very much. Don't forget, underneath this video, you can click the link to vote for us at the Podcast Awards. We would greatly, greatly appreciate that. But for now, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you very soon. We're On Track GP, and Happy New Year.